Hello.
You're all right, Janey. How you doing?
How is it going? How is the Christmas season serving you?
Yeah, I can't really complain at all, to be honest. It's been nice and quiet at work at the very least for me. And not for everybody else. I'm a team leader, so I have to basically I have lots of work when they don't have work because when I work in a call center, so when the lines aren't busy, we do like coaching and stuff like that and help out with the advisors.
Hmm.
But then we can't afford to have them off the phone at all. So I basically just spend my entire time just listening to what their calls are, whilst also arguing with people on Twitter, which is the best way to be honest. How about yourself?
No, I do enjoy a good argument on Twitter, so like I relate entirely.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good, like I have a bit of a headache, but like when you have like a niggly head, but like it's not coming to fruition yet, and it's annoying me. Because I feel like it's gonna become like a migraine and I can't be arsed with that, to be honest. But I'm gonna just keep downing water and hope that like solves the issue. But like we've just had like such a good meme watching like Boris say that he was definitely not at a Christmas party and this was definitely nothing shady whatsoever. And there's nothing to see here whatsoever. We're just
Yeah,
we're just having a business meeting.
absolutely. Just a regular old business meeting. Like the rules state that if you're doing something business related, then it's fine, right? So you can get away with it.
Obviously,
But
yeah.
what an absolute fucking
Me.
mess. There's a reason why. There's a reason why the series I'm doing YouTube with them is called Normal Island. 'Cause we are very normal around here. Normal. It's a normal island for normal people.
Well, I've heard of Turf Island. Normal Island. I feel like it might be a bit of a stretch, personally. But I like the
Fair.
optimism in your voice, if nothing else.
Quite so, quite so. Um, the worst part about all of this as well, the absolute worst part, is how you know how in the we've been I don't know if you've been watching the polls or anything, been like following Britain Elects on Twitter, for example.
Oh
Um,
yeah, yeah, we are still like not
I
doing
mean,
that well.
well, like it's now sort of even with Labour slightly pulling ahead, right? Whereas, like like tens of thousands of people dead to austerity, wind rush, loads of people dead because of a poor like COVID policy, all of that, nobody cares. As soon as Boris Johnson has a party he shouldn't have been at, suddenly the British public now like give a huge shit about what the Conservative Party are doing. I hate that this is the somehow the litmus test the British public have seen to be gone too far in their eyes when we've had a decade of
Yeah,
poisonous
the
neoliberal
worst.
policy that's just basically destroyed the fabric of the country. So it reminds me of when
Mhm.
there was a little bit of a poll blip as well when they announced that changing how they were changing the national insurance, and then suddenly it's affecting someone's own pocket. Now the public start caring, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like this is the Christmas party that broke the camel's back.
True,
But
true.
like I still feel like Boris will not resign. Like he will hold on to his position with his like dying gasp of air. Like he will never ever give it up. Like it doesn't matter what he does. He will. I mean, like think how long it took to fire Dominic Cummings and how long it took for like Matt Hancock to resign, even though like there was so much damning evidence. And like all of those things, as well as like all the corruption that happened with Dido Harden, like none of this stuff that's had like several independent inquiries, like none of that has done enough to like bring this government down. Like somehow they're still doing fine, like at least like level the Labour, where we're not seeing Boris Johnson under any real calls to resign besides from the opposition, but no one within his own party is saying it. And like his supporters aren't really saying it. Like they think, oh, he's like Bojo, the everyday clown. But we're not really like learning anything. Like we're not learning from these mistakes.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. The issue is what the Conservatives doing at the moment, what they've always kind of been really good at doing, was having a fall guy and closing ranks, right? So I'm sure there is plenty of people within the Conservative Party at the moment who find this horrendous, right? And in which a lot of them, because a lot of them were against lockdown policies to begin with. Obviously, I disagree with that entirely, but from their point of view, they realize, well, they've now, if everyone's going to have to go ahead with these policies, why is it that they could show such a level of hypocrisy? Because not only because it undermines the lockdown policies that were put in place, it also undermines the Conservative Party's position in power, for example. Because remember, these people, these Conservative MPs, this is their job, right? This is how they get paid. This is how they take all their lobby money and be able to use it to affect public policy. So anything that Boris Johnson does recklessly, optically, could affect their future income moving forward, right? So they were really good at then closing ranks to be able to make sure that it goes in such a way that it protects their own income, for example. Like, remember, the reason why Matt Hancock resigned in the end of it wasn't because of the NHS issues. It wasn't because of all the dead people, right? He resigned because he was caught necking with
Having an
somebody else.
affair. Yeah,
Exactly.
exactly.
Like, and they found a convenient excuse to fire him that wasn't related to his level of competence as a member of the cabinet, right? Doesn't matter how much poor stuff he did as a cabinet member, they find any reason outside of that to be able to terminate him and use him as the fall guy, essentially.
Yeah, like he got away with so much shit. Like if you think about everything that happened with PPE, and then you think about like, I mean, he wasn't necessarily like directly related to track and trace, but he definitely had like a pretty big role to play in that. And as well with like the contracts that were made with Dido Harden and whatever, like he had a hand in so much dodgy shit that went on during lockdown. Like the way that we weren't really dealing with the likely hospital overflow. We were setting up these Nightingale hospitals, but they weren't adequately staffed and they were never going to really be able to be. And like he kind of fucked up so many times and nobody ever pulled him and was like, we might want to get rid of him now. It was when he had the affair, because that's undermining Conservative values. He did neck another lass. But like, these family values, people, okay, we cannot allow.
Absolutely. It reminds me of remember in the 90s, what was it, Stephen Milligan, the Tory MP who like asphyxie wanked himself to death, back when they were trying to do this whole back to basics kind of...
Wait, what the fuck is this?
Do you not know about this? Right, so,
no.
I don't know what you are, so I don't know what you remember of this. But in the 90s, during like the John Major administration, they had this thing called the Back to Basics policy platform, which is all about like proper like conservative social values coming back. And then at one point during the administration, an MP called Stephen Milligan like killed himself during autoerotic asphyxiation. Right, whilst they were trying to promote conservative values as a genuine kind of policy platform for themselves.
Okay, I cannot. Is it too soon to laugh?
Oh, it was okay to laugh immediately, right? Like it's just again, it's
the irony of it all. I cannot.
I know, right? I know I hate to like go to hypocrisy as an argumental tactic because it's really kind of like a low bar to cross, right? Just saying, well, because it doesn't actually attack someone else's point if you're just accusing them of being hypocritical. But it is, however, extremely funny. And
that's for sure.
To accuse people of being hypocritical.
It's absolutely hilarious, and very double standardy, like to the most ridiculous extent. I'm the thing is, like, the problem is, I think as like a country, our bar is so low for this government now that I don't know what. Maybe it takes a seemingly kind of stupid story, but something that can like is like very pointed and very much well reported as it has been the last few days, and like obvious because these videos have come out of like Jacob Rees-Mogg having a party, and then also of this the press conference woman laughing about it. Like those things are like, you can't get around that. You've got literal evidence there, mate. Maybe it takes something as seemingly ridiculous as that to actually tilt the bar in our favor, but it sucks that like this is the thing, because so much like the regular, like, has been going on for 10 years austerity, it's not a sexy story to sell to the public. Like, they're not going to care. It's very mundane, you know? Like, it shouldn't be, but it is,
Yeah.
realistically. And that's why no one cares. And the figures on that mean nothing because people can't, it's not shocking enough, and it
Mhm.
happens every day. Poverty is not new. And I think at this point, because it's gone on for so long with this government, it's just treated as like standard another day under the Tory government. Like, we talk about Tory
Yeah.
austerity, we talk about cuts to programs, but we almost like shoulder shrug and get on with it, you know? But when you see something that is a bit of a meme, this stupid party, and can be, you know, a very nice, sexy story, sexy scandal, for the tabloids to get their hands on, then, you know, that makes all the difference. I mean, I wish it didn't, but unfortunately, that's kind of the way we're primed to react to these kind of scandals and how the sensationalized media really works.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And like with things like austerity and the level of poverty and homelessness and what's happening to the housing market, these are all kind of gradual things, right? They happen over time, so it's easy
Mm.
to abstract away from them. It's easy to think of it as somebody else's problem. Whereas something like, for example, the people who'd set the rules not abiding by the rules that most people, I mean, the vast majority of people, went over and followed there. That you feel like the direct impact of that. Like, there are plenty of people, no matter what background they were from, right? Whereas poverty and the housing issue, and austerity only really affects the working class and the poor. Everybody having
Mm.
to stay home and not see their parents or not see their family, not be able to go to funerals and weddings, for example, if somebody dies of COVID over the Christmas period, right? That affects literally everybody. So suddenly it's something that's a very kind of unifying thing. Whereas obviously for you and I, where we see the impacts of austerity on a daily basis, and we interact with the people who are affected by these in their everyday lives. Some person living out in fucking Chipping Sodbury, when all of this stuff is completely imaginary as far as they're concerned, they don't have a way of properly engaging with it, whereas they can do with a story like this.
Yeah, I think if you live anywhere that is middle class, you're not going to see. I think there are like times where you might come into contact with it. So my family is relatively well off. I've been very lucky with the way I've grown up. But I first sort of felt austerity when I needed to see mental health services.
Hmm.
I realized I was on waiting list for like over a year. And I think that was the first time my parents really interacted with it on a personal basis. And because of that, like, that kind of made them think like, well, what's the experience for everyone else like? Because we can afford to go privately when I was a teenager, you know? But
Yeah,
there's so many people that can't afford to do that. It can be like unbelievably expensive. Like, I'm seeing someone privately now that's like 90 quid a week. Like, it's fucking ridiculous, you know? Like, most people can't afford that. And I think COVID absolutely was something that was very sort of unifying in that way, because you had families that wanted to see their relatives and they were from like areas where they never even met poor people, or they never had any homelessness in their region, and they've never had to deal with those services, or have even like just some personal like experiences. Like, some people don't know people who work in the NHS. There are people that don't know people who work in social care, and they can't conceptualize. And if you're lucky enough not to have any family involved in social care or needing like any services through the NHS, then you might never like have to, you might not have to deal with that, and you might never really understand that.
yeah,
I think you can hear about these things and not understand the real life effects of them. Um, Even if you have like kind of distant empathy and sympathy for people, I think if you see it up close and you see how like ugly it really is and what's been done, like the effects of austerity have actually had on real life people, then when you hear about like the figures of people who have died in poverty, or have died because they haven't had access to mental health services, like
Yeah.
then you can like it really hits home because that feels personal. I wish it was more engaging at like a general societal level. I really wish people cared more about it. I mean, I've been aware of that stuff from my teen years because I've always been kind of like liberal.
Yeah.
But like a lot of people, if they are like like a lot of people my age and younger, they don't care about politics, you know, like they're just getting on and doing whatever they want, especially young people, you know. If you're at uni and stuff, you're probably like not asked, you're just going out with your mates and enjoying life. But and then they're never gonna like have that feeling of like, oh well, fuck the government because I know about all these issues. I mean, we all know like how insular social media can be with these things. Like, you can be like on the political side of Twitter, and you can be on the fucking cat meme side of Twitter, and you might never see the other one. Like, it really does become the way the algorithms work. Like, you do become wrapped up in your own bubble. And I
Yeah.
think that happens as well, like in social circles, like generally speaking, you're a representation of all the people around you. And the people around you are usually like a mirror some of your characteristics too. And that can happen, especially with social class. Like if you're in a
Yeah.
school in a rich area, then you might only meet people that are upper middle class. If you go to private school, even more so. And you might never, ever, ever have any interaction with these services. And therefore you're never gonna see the actual real life impact. And I do think, in the most crude way, that COVID has been good for people actually opening their eyes to a lot of these things. You know, obviously,
Yeah.
you would never want it to be COVID. You know, you'd always hope that people are just kind of like literally woke to these issues, but unfortunately, it does usually take something horrendous to happen to people to wake up and really see what's going on.
That's why I always said it was incredibly frustrating that we did have the Conservative Party in power during the pandemic, right? I mean, sure, I agree. I think it was
Absolutely.
really good that we had some kind of, um, high level event that really got people engaged on a political level. That what I find it frustrating is it clearly threw the failures of kind of free market capitalism into and neoliberal capitalism specifically. It kind of threw it into the weeds and into how completely useless it is to cope with situations like this. So, for example, something like the government taking control of how people get paid to make sure that people don't go starving. That's a completely like non-market based approach. Governments across the world had to change the way in which they dealt with the economic situation in their country to deal with the fact that, if you didn't do it, the whole country would stop, which showed how just like this kind of this ultimate deference to market dynamics was just never going to work. So if you had somebody a little bit more radical in power, someone left leaning, like a certain Jeremy Corbyn, then we would at least would have had somebody who was willing to take drastic steps to make a huge sea changes in the way our economy was structured, rather than just kind of patching over the failures of neoliberalism at this time, right? But I disagree in that young people aren't really engaged with politics. But I think that that's certainly true to an extent, but I think in recent times, especially on places like TikTok, young people have been way more exposed to kind of political discussion, way more than they
Hmm.
ever have been in the past, right? You have
Hmm.
people on TikTok talking about like very kind of high level political theories to try and get young people involved. I think it's good. The issue that I have is that whereas I'm a millennial, right? I grew up being told in the 90s and the early 2000s that if you worked hard, you could do it, you could get anywhere, right? And there was this kind of this dream of having your own house, and you got married, you had two kids, blah blah blah. One person worked, one person stayed home to take care of the kids, right? That whole paradigm, which we was kind of sold, really, we were kind of sold this dream of what life was going to be like once you grew up and once you became an adult. And then we and
Oh,
then
how wrong we were.
exactly,
our
and like
generation.
because like especially when you look at like the housing market, like it's like we're never gonna, like most people from millennials and Gen Z are never going to be homeowners, but millennials were promised that in the way that kind of Zoomers weren't, for example, because the housing market was already fucked as of 2008, which is when Zoomers started getting to the point at which they would start being at least somewhat politically involved. So trying to
Hmm.
be able to sell the failures of society to people who essentially think that like the idea that you just never become a homeowner, that's not something that they ever really would have engaged with otherwise. It's not something they were previously promised, right? Do you see what I mean?
Hmm. Yeah, like I think I agree with you that like some social media sites can be really good. TikTok has been very good for that. I think it is translating that into political action
Mm,
outside of just kind of talking. I think a lot of people are engaged on particular issues, but they might not be interested in electoral politics.
yeah,
Um, they might not feel, we see that young people tend not to be motivated to go out and vote, which is a huge issue because our issues are then not reflected within party manifestos. We're kind of like left out, and then that creates like that vicious circle of like, well, we're not gonna care about what issues you care about because you're not gonna vote for us anyway. So like whatever, you're not our voting base, and like vice versa. Um, but yeah, like I don't know how I do want to. It is that thing of like capitalizing off the negatives and really like getting that home to people, but it's how, I guess it's like trying to figure out how you can do it responsibly. Because you don't want to like doomerism people, but you want to
yeah.
also like bring home the reality. And like I say, you don't want a big crisis like this, but unfortunately, like this has happened, and the Tories were in government, and they've kind of shown us all up.
Yeah, for sure, for sure, for sure. And it was like the perfect, and then the pandemic was just the perfect excuse for them to essentially launder a
Hmm.
bunch of public money into the pockets of the donors, the pockets of the people who support them and pay their bills. Right? It was the perfect excuse for them to say, well, we needed to spend 37 billion on track and trace because of the pandemic. It just happened to go to a relative of Winston Churchill whose brother is also an MP and with which the CEO is also a donor to the Conservative Party. Right? It was the perfect excuse and go, well, we didn't. Oh, we had to get the PPE from somewhere, right? We had to get track and trace from somewhere. Where in other times that would have been a huge scandal. 'Cause remember, obviously, cash for honours was a big scandal during the new Labour government. Yet it's not really been as much of a scandal when the kind of similar thing happened now because we're all too kind of wrapped up in pandemic politics. Do you know what I mean?
Hmm. Yeah, I feel like our like idea of acceptance is so warped now because we are like we've just got such a shitty new normal, and unfortunately that is our bar for standards is so low
Mm.
that like we don't have standards anymore, especially when we've got Boris
Yeah,
Johnson as prime minister, and it's a sad state of affairs. It's trying to kind of make people see this should not be acceptable. Like this isn't okay.
yeah,
In the rest, like no one should be doing this. Why are we letting this slide? And I don't know if it's fatigue, like political fatigue, whereas we've just heard all these things that have come out gradually. All the different points we can like show at the corruption within the Tory party, where we are just so like bored of it, and it's just like, it's another story, like whatever, it doesn't even make the front page. I wonder if that's like the case for corruption. You would think that, because I feel like the general sentiment in the general public, the people that especially that aren't politically engaged necessarily, is that there's corruption in politics. They're all like crooks. They're all corrupt. And that's the baseline. And that's what is expected. And because of that, when you see it, you don't react to it. And then you become complacent. And now we are in a pandemic where everything is even more intense. And everything else outside of politics, like the actual pandemic, is like way more important. So our ability to engage with the corruption stuff is so reduced. And I wonder, when that will reset and go back to like what is acceptable. I just
Yeah.
like I don't know when people will be like engaged in that way, and I don't know. I kind of I don't know. Like I'm not sure what's gonna happen. I have like my own cynicism, but then I'm also like wanting to be hopeful too. And every so often I'll check in the polls and I'm like, please, God, just give me some faith. Like I just need a bit of faith. What's good is that the Green Party seem to be doing a little bit better. That's
Yeah, it's
like
been
all
it's
I've
been very
got.
encouraging. Yeah. The issue, what's frustrating as well, is that the right wing media have used this kind of hyper normalization of kind of political acts that you would be unthinkable. These have been all completely like normalized to the point where we think that we've entered this kind of new normal that would never have existed previously. And the right wing media have been really good at using this to disaffect people from politics in general, rather than specifically target
Hmm.
the people who are engaging in the corruption. Like, I hear so many times where people will say things like, "Well, I don't vote, I don't engage with politics because all politicians are liars, they're all crooks, etc., etc." And that's a
Yeah.
very and that sort of obviously disengagement from politics and people not and people not voting is usually incredibly correlative with political political fatigue, as you mentioned before. Now, the problem is that I don't know about you. Obviously, I understand that you're a liberal, but obviously myself, and I'm sure you're aware, I am a leftist, right? So I talk about capitalism a lot. And one of the things that is unique to that is unique to the well, not unique to the UK, sorry, but is specific to the UK as opposed to America, is where one of the parties we have, the Labour Party, is funded by the unions, right? So it is explicitly a party with working class interests at heart, rather than the Conservative Party, who are funded by donors, the vast majority, right? So there
Hmm.
is this disparity in the overall incentive structures that govern what the parties do and don't want with these particular issues. So, for example, um, if you had the the idea that all politicians are bad, all politicians are corrupt, sure, maybe all politicians may have some kind of ulterior motive to what they say and do, but that doesn't mean that they're both um, cynically corrupt in the way that the Conservatives are, because what the incentive structure that governs Conservative policy is essentially the wills of the bourgeoisie. It's the wills of the capitalist class who fund their electoral projects, because that's what they exist to do, which is then put forward policy that is in its essence, beneficial to those who donate. Whereas in the Labour Party is the opposite. They have no big money donors on the back end, or at least they never used to until kind of New Labour stuff started happening. They never used to have like big political donors who they would then have to kowtow to with policy. So at the very least, they weren't corrupt in that sort of a way, because at the end of the day, if they don't do what the union wants, then they're not going to be able to have a manifesto to put into practice, right? So there is this
Hmm.
explicit difference between the party that has to appeal to the unions, and a party that has to appeal to the bourgeoisie. There's this definitive difference, which is not covered by this whole, "oh well, all politicians are corrupt, I'm going to disengage with politics" style point of view. Which is why, as a leftist, I'm still absolutely in favour of voting for the Labour Party at this, even though I very much dislike Keir Starmer and what he's done, the things he's done within the party, because as long as the Labour Party is beholden to the whims of the unions, then they're at the very least going to be tacitly in support of things that are within my own personal material interests. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. Like I'm definitely more to the right of you, but I generally do agree with you. Like in the past, to be honest, I've been kind of a bit more left leaning.
Hmm.
I've kind of like jumped around different parties. So I voted Lib Dem for a while, and then I wasn't really affiliated with any party because I was with the Lib Dems, but then I left the Lib Dems, and then I joined the like I didn't join the Green Party, but I voted for the Greens just in everything that came up like down ballot. And then after 2019, I started voting Labour, And I joined the party and have been like active within it. And then I went to the women's conference earlier in the year, and that was really eye-opening to see how involved unions really are.
Yeah.
And that was like a good thing to see for me, to kind of get an understanding of how the party is funded and structured, because you do see, especially regarding COVID, you'll have like a lot of big unions that are like health related, that are like social care related, and then you're like, oh shit, yeah, like you really understand how much of an impact said policies have had on these things. Um, yeah, like I think the good thing is that we're not as corrupt as a country in general as the US is, because we don't have lobbying to the same extent. We are way more controlled than the US and a lot of other countries, and I'm very thankful for that. Unfortunately, it's something Americans seem to relish, is the unlimited amount of money that goes into politics. Even within like liberal circles, that is like well enjoyed. If you can get the right people behind you, you can run pretty nicely off a campaign.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I'm probably gonna. I don't know. I've been kind of and ahhing about Keir Starmer. I don't really know. I don't really have an opinion on him. I just kind of like. I'll vote for him if he's a leader, But like realistically, I don't really care that much. I mean, he wasn't my first choice in the leadership vote. I
Yeah.
voted for Lisa Nandy. We were all Randy for Nandy, like we miss our girl, and it was a great slogan. So obviously the main reason to get behind it. But yeah, Keir was second. I used to like the way you could put the boot into the Tories, but I need like a bit more. I need a bit more like weight thrown behind his words, really.
Sure, sure. I understand that. That makes a lot of sense to me from from what your perspective would be. The issue I have is that um the level to which he's essentially done I don't know if you've been kind of looking or read about like the internal left kind of purge that's been going on, because
Yeah.
they like Starmer has it in his mind that the issue with like the 2019 loss was just, it was all about Jeremy Corbyn, and what the Labour Party has to do to be electable is to just eviscerate any kind of nominally left-leaning elements within the party, which obviously I'm sure you understand I completely disagree with, right? But it's fine. Like,
Mm.
the issue I have is that I'm happy to compromise. I'm a utilitarian. I understand the utilitarian calculus of just saying, well, the Tories are bad. Even if I have to ally with somebody who hates my guts like Keir Starmer, I'm happy to do that. But the problem is that there's this idea that somehow like leftists are unwilling to compromise, when we've had to essentially compromise with what New Labour have decided should be Labour Party policy ever since 1997 up until 2016. So I find it very frustrating that whilst I have spent quite a long time having to compromise with the right-leaning elements of Labour Party, for some reason that's not good enough for them, and I'm still getting excised from discussions around policy with the Labour Party, or in the cases of some people, like a lot of left-leaning people have literally just had their membership revoked for liking the wrong post on Facebook, or supporting the wrong left-leaning elements within the party. Right? Just that's the frustration that I have.
Mm. Yeah, see, like I've had some really bad experiences with the left in the Labour Party, which kind of pushed me a bit more right leaning, to be honest. Um, I saw anti-Semitism up fucking first and foremost, like at face value. And when I like raised it as an issue, I was basically told like it's like normal. And I was like, well, this is not okay. Like, this is actually unacceptable. I don't think Israel is controlling Keir Starmer. I don't think he's a plant. And I don't think there are people pulling the strings in cabals. Just stick in the triple parentheses at that point, babe, get it over and done with. And I also had a bit of quite a lot of abuse from people within the party, which was along the lines of, we're not going to compromise on anything ever. you should be any right-leaning people within the party, by which I mean like within the Labour Party. I don't mean like right-leaning as in Tories.
Yeah,
They should be excised. They need to be hunted down and rooted out, and they belong in the lowest form of hell. And like all of this shit from so-called socialists who I considered myself to be a socialist at one point, and my friends in real life that are socialists have never fucking spoken about liberals like that. And yeah, like I kind of had that experience, and then when I saw people getting kicked out, I was like, I'll fucking blame them if they're getting rid of people like this. Like, it's kind of unbelievable. There is a big issue within the Labour Party of like women being harassed within it by like some of the older men that are in the party, and that's kind of what happened with me. And I was like very engaged with politics, but all of this shit has really disenfranchised me to be active. And like I'm very left leaning when it comes to like social policy. It's more the economic stuff that I'm like less radicalized on. So like I considered myself like kind of like a sock dem, and it's been really disappointing to see how when I've engaged with socialists within the party locally, how disenfranchising that's been for me personally. But yeah, what can you do?
Yeah, no, I get what you mean. I get, and I think there's definitely toxic elements on both kind of sides of the party, which I find frustrating because at the end of the day, the important thing should be as again, I always say, I'm a utilitarian. We just need to be able to do with do the best with the hand that we're dealt, right, and be able
Mm-hmm.
to work pragmatically to work towards specific goals. And I find it frustrating when there are plenty of. I think that I mean you talk about obviously the anti-Semitism crisis within Labour. I think there is plenty of room to be had to have discussions about the actions of the state of Israel, right? Like I think most people would agree with that. I mean, Saeed Avasi left the Conservative Party because of their policy towards Israel, right? So and the conflict that's happening in the Middle East at the moment. There's always good points to have discussion about. There's always good points to have discussion about how specific media outlets will influence dialogue to create a certain narrative surrounding that. There's always conversation to be had, and then you'll have people who'll just openly talk about anti-Semitic conspiracy theories, like the Rothschilds and George Soros, all that fucking nonsense, right?
So,
Which I find incredibly frustrating
so
because it's not good for the left because it's you're being anti-Semitic, it's horrendous. And the second part of it that's awful is that it doesn't help anybody in fucking Palestine either when you're essentially tying your pro-Palestinian activism to your anti-Semitism, right? That literally helps
mhm.
fucking nobody. It drives around the fucking bend because at the end of the day, what we actually really want is liberation for Palestinian people rather than you using whatever platform that you've got to have some kind of hate boner for Israel, right? Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I think there is definitely dialogue to be had around the conflict there, and it is like that. It's just the engaging with it responsibly
Hmm.
that is the issue. And there's obviously going to be like bad actors on on both sides. Like some people are like too quick to jump to the gun and call something anti-Semitic when it's not, and then there are people that are actually anti-Semitic and will hide behind well, they're just purging me because I'm a leftist. And
Hmm.
it's like, if you were actually a leftist, you wouldn't be saying shit like that because you're being racist. Like that's what you're doing, okay? Um, so yeah, I completely agree. There's definitely wrong on both, and like you say, it doesn't do any benefit for the people that you're claiming to support. Like all you're doing is like reducing the chances of the general public wanting to engage with your rhetoric and support the cause of helping people in Palestine. Like you
Hmm.
are doing the opposite. It is
Yeah,
so antithetical to what you're actually like originally arguing for when you're just going down the line of conspiracies. Like who is that serving? It's so
yeah.
ridiculous to me.
You're absolutely right.
But
The
yeah.
real frustrating thing, what I absolutely hate, is when obviously I was talking about people who talk about things like the Jewish banking conspiracies, all that fucking anti-Semitic shit that you get, and I'm just like, you could literally just say the issue is just rich capitalists who are in the media, people like Rupert Murdoch, Paul Dacre, or whatever, people who aren't even Jewish in this, like, not even close to being anywhere related to the Jewish community. You can just say
Mm.
these people, they have a media narrative that is used to be able to dissuade people from left wing values or whatever. You don't have to then talk about Jewish bankers or this anti-Semitic shit to be able to put this point across. It's David Icke stuff, and it's embarrassing.
Oh my God, David Icke. Yeah. This is no longer Jeremy Corbyn. This is Piers Corbyn levels.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. That's that. Yeah. Absolutely. 100%. 100%. Absolutely
That
right.
is like the perfect meme to conceptualize that. Like, it is so kooky.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. For
like the
sure.
best thing, the only good thing to come out of all of the conspiratorial stuff is just the memes of 5G was going to blow everyone's brains up. And I'm still waiting for that to happen. Like, I don't know if the tower's been switched on yet. Just wondering for a friend.
Waiting
But
for the cat. Waiting for the Catboy transformation gas.
like, I need to know when this is going to happen. I need a plan. Is it going to affect the microchip in my arm, or will that only be when I get the booster? Do I start feeling the effects of 5G?
When I get the booster, is that when I start buying Microsoft product?
I mean, I am just a big fan of Bill Gates. Like, on an unrelated note, I really appreciate Bill Gates. I think he does a lot of good work. I also enjoy talking about my boy Soros. He's a great guy. Very misunderstood, you know?
I
Gets
mean,
a lot of
he did try and
unfair
destroy the
coverage.
UK economy, which isn't great.
But that's a side story. Like, who cares? Like, he's just a really great guy. And also, I'm changing over from my Apple products to get my Microsoft computer. Yeah, it's so ridiculous. Like, some of the conspiracies that have come out, the lockdown conspiracies. I have to say, the 5G was like my favorite meme of 2020. Amongst all the chaos and the world falling apart, the fact that there was actually people trying to rip down 5G towers was just so, oh,
Oh, was crazy, wasn't
beautiful.
it?
Like, I look back, I was like, did that happen? Was there people actually like out in the streets just trying to like climb these towers and like tear them down?
Well, there's
And it did.
yeah, like, is it any wonder that the people just kind of are getting disillusioned with politics if this is the level to which they're going to engage in nonsense, right? Like, like, what if you're genuinely of the opinion that all of these things are coming together so that 5G is going to poison your brain and turn you into some kind of like slave drone to these kind of like the telecommunications like network or whatever. If you genuinely think that, then of course you're not going to give a shit about about what's happening in some kind of nebulous idea about public policy from conservative austerity for the past 7 years, because you're too
Who
busy
cares
going,
about
well, the world's
social
about to
care?
end.
Yeah, who cares about social care issues? Like, I'm just here for the 5G memes. Like, it's so ridiculous. But like, David Icke's nothing new to this conspiratorial circuit. And it's kind of insane how involved what's his name? The dude that originally started all the anti-vax stuff around autism. Like, that dude has still
Andrew
got his
Wakefield.
hands. Yeah, he's still like heavily involved in the new COVID vaccine conspiracies. Like, that guy's making bank. Like, they want to talk about where the money's going. It's going to fucking Andrew Wakefield. That's who's
Well,
really profiting from
that's the
this.
issue. Like, you can always follow the fucking money every time you look for the money, right? I mean, assuming you've watched the H-bomb video about it.
Um, H bomb,
Oh, the H-bomber
maybe.
guys. Yeah, so where essentially, literally, like, I don't know how much you know about this, or whether I'm assuming you've done a load of research. But like, it's crazy that Andrew Wakefield was literally just paid by somebody who was developing like a monovalent measles vaccine to
Mm,
create a fake study to discredit the MMR so that they could make money
yeah,
off of their. In fact, that's crazy to me. Like, there's always just money somewhere. It's always downstream of it. There's always just
yeah.
somebody holding the purse, dripping money into the pockets of the people, right?
What's even
Crazy.
crazier is how like that wasn't really That's held on for dear life, that conspiracy and that idea that autism was caused by vaccines. Like, you'll still hear people like believe in that pre-COVID, like unironically. And it's like unbelievable how that stood the test of time. It's clearly
Yeah.
not true. Otherwise, we'd all have autism. As far as I'm aware, we don't literally all have autism, but I'm pretty sure most of us will have had the MMR vaccine.
I think,
So
yeah,
I don't
exactly.
know. Was this a 3G related thing? Like when 3G turned on, was the autism start? Like, I don't know. It doesn't make any sense. There's just like, yeah, it's ridiculous how he's made so much money. The reason I remember reading about that particular corruption was there was a Channel 4 documentary on it about, it was kind of about Piers
Corbyn.
Corbyn. I mean, what's the bloody difference at this point, honestly?
I mean,
But like,
Piers Morgan's almost turned into the voice of reason, and now all he's doing now, and then like, but then as soon as people the mood started turning against the Tories, he's now getting clicks off of attacking trans people. So he's back in the bargain bin.
oh well, yeah, he's busy. He's got Meghan Markle to think about. Like, it's all he
True,
does 24/7.
true.
Like, he's just obsessed. He's like, oh my god, Meghan, yeah, what she done today? Like, he goes home at night and there's just this huge picture of Meghan Markle. Like, his wallpapers are just Meghan Markle, and his curtains are just pictures of Meghan Markle. And what he watches on TV is interviews of Meghan Markle. And then he goes on Twitter and he talks about Meghan Markle, and that's his life. That's his whole world. He's actually got rid of his entire family because he's moved them out and just made like Meghan Markle kind of like statues of them instead.
Yeah.
It's a bit weird, but like, what else has he got to do when he did quit his job on Good Morning Britain? Busy.
It's wild to me that there's still this huge group of people in the UK who are just like absolutely fucking mad for the royal family. I'm just like, with all the things to like have some obsession with, and which clearly he's seen that there's a market for it, so he's just gonna tap into these people who just don't have this obsession with the royal family. I just don't get it. I just honestly do not get it at all.
Yeah, like I'm so indifferent to the royal family. Like, I really don't care. As soon as Liz goes, like, fuck Charles. I watched The Crown. I know everybody's mom is obsessed with our best friend Diana. Always in our
Yeah.
hearts. Like, everybody's mom was best friends with her. So fuck Charles. I don't want to see Camilla. I don't know her, and I will not. I will not accept either of them as being in charge of this country. No, 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 not today. And I don't care about anyone under that because it's going to go to William. And like, realistically, I don't care for William. Like, he is so irrelevant. So yeah, unless like we're going to have Queen Meg, I'm not interested. Like, I really
100%.
don't care.
Absolutely, absolutely right. Like, and it's just you can't say anything about the royal family nowadays without it being turning into some huge argument with like somebody who has this weird obsession with it. I honestly don't get it. Anyway, you said you're watching a documentary about Piers Corbyn, right? On Channel 4.
Yeah, that was a few months ago. It was about Andrew Wakefield. It was about the anti-vax conspiracies generally and like where the money all kind of led to. And then it did like the look back at the original MMR kind of scandal stuff and how he's still prominent and giving these like corporate speeches to people that are then promoting this kind of rhetoric about the COVID vaccines and how
Yep.
Piers Corbyn and a lot of other conspiracy theorists have kind of jumped on that, and like the real life effects of anti-vax propaganda. So there's like a good amount of it's really worth watching. Like, I'm pretty sure it's still on like 4D or all 4, whatever it's called now. Pretty sure it's like the same thing, but like, yeah, I recommend it. It's really good.
I'll definitely have to check it out.
It's a good meme. Have you seen the video of Piers Corbyn getting tricked by that
Yes, by the South
YouTuber?
African guy. Yeah,
So
yeah.
good,
Oh,
so
so
good.
good. Did you see the Piers Corbyn song?
I haven't watched it, but like I've heard about it and I'm quite scared to like
Oh god,
YouTube it.
it's like premium cringe. It is incredibly cringe. The best part about him is how awkward he looks whilst he's singing, whereas the people who are with him all look like they know what they're doing and they know that they've got a script
Wait,
they're
he's like
reading from.
someone's mad grandpa.
He
Like
literally is.
I don't know what kind of like who is going to him for medical advice with peace and love. The guy's off his rocker and he should probably be, I'm not going to say in a care home, but like, let's be honest.
Yeah, it should be literally.
Man's lost his
He
marbles.
should have he should have handlers at the very least, right?
Yeah,
Um,
oh yeah, needs a bloody handler too.
but
Preferably not David Icke.
fingers crossed. What one would hope. The problem is, like, I don't know with Piers Corbyn whether he's like genuinely deranged, and like whether he
Oh,
genuinely
I
believes
think
all
he
the shit that he's.
actually is.
You think he
I
really
think he
believes all the shit
is.
that he's
It's
spouting? Yeah.
the hair. The hair to me says mad scientist, and he's just got so like he's really watched Joker, and he was like, I'm just gonna embrace Joker energy, and now he's got Joker brain, and he's like a mad scientist, but he's not doing anything for good. Like he's definitely got like in all those old films where you had a mad scientist in a shed. He's got a shed. Like I know he's got a shed. Maybe he's tried to make some vaccines. Maybe that's what caused this. I'm just saying, the formulation I doubt he would have perfected, is all I'm saying. And, it's a little bit, I don't know, like his whole image is just like nutty grandpa. Like you want to be, you're at your Christmas dinner and he's spouting off about 5G and you're like, God, just shut up, please.
Yeah,
Please, just
like
shut up.
Piers Corbyn has his shed and Jeremy Corbyn has his allotment. They are not the same.
Yeah, like, actually. Oh God, imagine being at like Christmas dinner with them. That must be bloody weird.
Yeah,
I wonder if
must
they
be
like talk.
wild. Apparently,
Like,
I heard they don't talk. So that's what I heard.
they don't talk. Ooh.
Yeah, I think they're all. I think they're a little. They keep to themselves most of the time. But I'm sure they might put aside the politics for Christmas. Heaven knows. Let's hope at least somebody in the
That must be.
country does
I
to
would
a certain
love to
extent.
be there, though. I would
Yeah,
love to be
be a
there.
fly on the wall. Be amazing.
Just the chaos. I wonder where they'd have the dinner. Would they have it? I don't know if their parents are still alive. Or would I mean? Imagine going to Piers Corbyn's house. I would love to look around his house. Like I imagine he's just got so much mad stuff.
Yeah, for sure, for
Like he
sure.
definitely has like human heads in jars or something. Like if you just go into his garage, or shed. Like I feel like he's got like some kind of dodgy bunker or like basement, even though like no one in the UK really has basements.
He definitely has a
He must
bunker.
be. He must be.
He was definitely a millennium bug theorist, right? Surely,
Oh
surely he
yeah, for
must have been
sure. I could so
100%.
see that. He was like underground with David Icke, like the lizard people are coming, David, please help me. And
Literally,
then it
literally.
turned midnight and everything was fine. And he was like, oh. But he was like, damn. Well, I believe it could happen still. Maybe, I hear 2012. It's meant to happen then, the end of the world. So we'll hold on till then. And now he's still just kind of, he was like, there's going to be a pandemic at some point that's going to cause the end of civilization. And then he was like, actually, the 5G thing, that sounds a bit more realistic than the actual, pandemic taking out the world. So let's get onto that one. That one's spicy. And
That's
yeah,
why it
like,
makes me think that he's a grifter. That's why he just always finds like some other kind of like nonsense talking point to get
mm,
his teeth into. Like, because if you were like a person who just like was completely enamored to a specific conspiracy theory, it would never really go away. And the evidence shows that, and that once somebody has some kind of conspiracy lodged in their brain, it's very difficult to dispose of it, especially if you try to dispose of it of your own accord rather than waiting for them to do it themselves. The evidence shows as such that people that tend to keep to the same conspiracy forever because they don't want because of sunk cost fallacy and things like that. Whereas the fact that he keeps jumping from conspiracy to conspiracy makes me think that it is
mm,
somewhat of an act, or maybe because a lot of people will get so consumed by the grifter lifestyle that they'll end up believing it without even realizing that they've started believing it. Right? They've sold themselves on the conspiracy theory that
yeah,
they've been
like the
peddling
lie,
for.
yeah.
Yeah,
Because
for
it's
sure. So
profitable. I don't know, yeah, like I kind of See, like like David, I definitely just grifting at this
Yeah,
point. There's
100%,
no way you can
100% grifting.
actually
Yeah, yeah.
believe. Like he has gone off. Maybe he believed it at one point when he originally had that interview, and like he was known as like the kooky kind of football player. But now I feel like he's literally making so much money and doing these tours and stuff. And it's like, well, if you actually really believe that money was so corrupt, you wouldn't be taking like all of this
Yeah,
money, and
for
going on
sure.
these kind of corporate events. But I feel like Piers Corbyn is just always ranting in the street and he's not really
Yeah,
gaining anything. Like, I don't know what he's
true.
gained. Like, he's just kind of like a bit mad. And the hair, it's just the hair for me, it's just the sticking point. I feel like he does always look a bit disheveled. Like, he's kind of like, he's spending so much time staying awake trying to figure out when the 5G is going to hit him that he's not had time to do his hair. So that's why I get the energy that he's just not. I feel like he just does believe this stuff, but then again, like, I don't know when he started having these beliefs.
Yeah, for
um
sure. And also,
so
like, even if he like even if he is 100% sincere, like the kind of company that you would keep in those situations would be the kind of people who would not only then reinforce your existing conspiracies, but then also sell you on new ones as well, right? If you're in the
mm.
conspiracy theorist sphere, like I don't know, I know you're not a fan of Vosh, but he did a debate with a climate change denier from Germany or whatever it's called, Olivier something.
Oh, him,
Oliver.
yes, I remember watching that.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
All
And then
this number.
like he doesn't believe in QAnon, but he does believe in climate change denial. He is an anti-Semite. He does all of this stuff because he's like once you're in that rabbit hole and you've gone down this route and this
Mm.
and you've surround yourself with this community of people. Not only is it people who will also, probably all believe all them already, but these are people who are easy to sell on additional conspiracy theories as well. So
Absolutely, yeah.
a couple of bad actors within these communities, and suddenly you've turned from people who think that people think that climate change isn't an issue, and now people who are believing in the crazy QAnon shit. Like
Yeah.
it's easy to
The
be addicted
QAnon
to
stuff
them.
is so like the QAnon is just I thought Pizzagate was like, well, I guess Pizzagate is kind of the infancy of QAnon. But like that, I thought people were. I mean, I knew people that believed that were fully believing that, like rational people. I remember I went to my ex's flat, and his flatmate was like obsessed with Pizzagate, and he was like showing me these videos, and I was like, this just is like the ramblings of a madman. It doesn't make any sense. But he was so
Yeah,
convinced that this is, and he was at uni and like a very good uni and very well educated guy. And I was like so confused as to how you fell into this kind of thought process. But then the upgrade to QAnon, like, is insane.
have you
I
been on?
can't.
I was gonna say, have you been on
Hmm?
the QAnon casualties subreddit?
I've seen posts by it, but I haven't like looked through it. And it's like always like very kind of like middle class, seemingly like mentally normal people
Hmm.
that are just spending a bit too much time online, have the luxury to, and they are fallen victim to these things, and they want to blame like personal issues on this cabal of child R words, and like
Yeah,
so then you can kind of like you can I could kind of understand how you could if you were like very emotionally vulnerable, how you could fall into that. But it's so crazy how many seemingly normal people have just fallen down the rabbit hole. But I guess it is like that confirmation bias thing where if you are you'll eventually, if you are on these threads, you're going to be around more and more radical people more and more frequently, and then you are going to be having that like in group out group kind of thought process where you don't anyone who's telling you that it's fake is in on it,
yeah,
and
for
you are
sure, for
the
sure.
ones fighting the good fight, and like who wants to be fighting on the side of child R words.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
you can see why you can get there, but it's crazy. I definitely need to have a look more on that subreddit because I've heard like there's a lot of interesting stories on there.
Yeah, for sure. The thing is that people recognize something's wrong. Things aren't great. We don't the dreams or promised to people aren't there anymore. if people recognize this, they understand it, they see it. Yet, they're gonna, if you fall into the wrong crowd, or somebody's, you get, some that little whisper happens in your ear saying, well, actually, it's not a complex problem with, the way the global economy is stratified, in the favoring the super rich in general, or whatever. Like, that's a complex problem to have to get your head around, the workings of
Yeah, it's
capitalism.
boring.
Whereas,
Like, let's be
exactly,
honest, it's not very interesting
not
when you consider.
sexy. Yeah,
Yeah, it's not an interesting tidbit, but these cabals of child, oh, it's
yeah,
much more
exactly.
sexy
Yeah,
story.
exactly. Like the Clintons are drinking children's adrenochrome to attain immortality. Like, that is sexy. If you're a conspiracy theorist, that's conspiracy theorist bait, like verbatim. Like, you can understand why people would be easily get wrapped up in these things, rather than just thinking, well,
Hmm.
maybe if we just improve the social institutions that we have, then we wouldn't have, all of the things that we love and cherish being destroyed in front of our very eyes, right? It's very,
Yeah.
like, that's why I find it very frustrating, because I'm just like, it's just the fact that, especially in America, for example, you have a political system that is entirely bound to the whims of capital, because there's no party of the unions in the United States. It's over here. There's no mediating factor, because at the end of the day,
Yeah.
and they don't, because, like, I blew my mind when I realized they don't have mandated parental leave in the United States. Like, what an embarrassment!
Yeah, it's
Because
insane. It's insane.
there's no will to
It,
do it. There's no will to do
like,
it.
it's nuts. Like, yeah, you just can't. The amount of things we take for granted here, that when you look over in the US, you're like, "Jeez, they haven't even sorted that out yet." Like,
Yeah, 100%.
Jesus. The bare,
Hundred
yeah,
percent.
but you're not even doing the bare minimum, mate. Like, you're not even trying at this point. It's insane. But yeah, like and they like, there seems to be such a emphasis on the hustle kind of mindset.
Oh, like
Whereas
Gary
it's like
V
the girl
types.
boss meme. Yeah, it's like the girl boss meme. Like, you are working. The people seem to like fetishize working ridiculous amounts of hours every
Oh
week,
God,
and I'm like, if you are, that is so depressing. Like,
that is
why would you be
horrific.
proud of that? I'd be miserable. I enjoy working like however many hours I work, and then I have time for myself, and then I can like enjoy the money I have, Like, I don't want to be miserable working for the sake of working. Like, surely you
Yeah,
work because you enjoy your job and because it pays your bills. You shouldn't be working to be like, I just love working. I just love it.
yeah.
It's like my
Respect the
favorite thing in
hustle.
the
Yeah.
world.
God,
Respect the
yeah.
hustle, guys.
I hate that. Yeah,
Hashtag motivational speaker.
I hate it. Absolutely despise it, because it's. I don't know. Again, this might just be me, just being a boring leftist, but it feels to me like a lot of this is getting pushed throughout the media sphere,
Mm,
because it's trying to place the blame onto people for not working hard enough, rather than the system for not being good
yeah.
enough, right? They're trying to say,
No, I
well,
agree with that.
like, if you're not, like, pounding the pavement, handing out CVs, and you're not, you know spending 70 hours a week grafting and grinding, and, on the Sigma grind set, then you don't deserve to have, the basic amenities that we should have, that people fought for. Like, people fought and died for, all of the social benefits that we have, things like the NHS, things like, the social safety net, that we take a lot for granted around here in
Yeah.
the UK, etc. These are things that were fought, long and hard for by trade unionists forever. And, I don't know, maybe it's just I have an axiomatic belief in the idea that working 40 hours a week should be enough to have a family and be able to afford to buy a house and leave a reasonable subsistence lifestyle, right?
And
I'm
have like enough left over to enjoy your life too.
exactly.
Not just have the bare minimum if you're working 40 hours a week. Like, you should be able to as well have like enough money to spend on like luxury goods and enjoy like the time you have off.
Mhm.
To just We are like at a point, this hustle culture is like, we the people that push that say things like, it's basically, you are saying that people don't deserve basic human rights, like access to healthcare, access to social services, and all the like basic, minimum wage. maternity leave, paternity leave. It's like, dude, what is wrong with you? Like, you're actually arguing that you're just not on the grind set, like the Sigma grind set. You're not there enough yet to deserve to live. Sorry.
Yeah.
Like, you don't deserve it. You haven't worked hard enough for it. Like, what? It's so crazy to me. These people
That's
are insane, though.
that's why I find it very toxic that this kind of hustle grind culture, whatever it is, this grind set culture, has been so marketed specifically to to Zoomers. Because as I was mentioning, earlier on in the stream, like they've never like a lot of Zoomers never really interacted with the idea of the kind of the American dream, I guess, of the picket fence and the house and the single job and
Yeah.
somebody staying home taking care of the kids or whatever, because that's never been part of their lexicon. Never really been part of like what's ever been pushed to them on a kind of societal level. They think that
Yeah.
this work 70 hours a week to
Oh,
this
God.
grind cycle.
How
They
depressing.
think this is fucking normal. It's absolutely not. It's just not normal. It's not normal at all.
No.
It shouldn't be normal.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, like I think there's so many places now where you're just so priced out of the housing market. I think some of it is like a postcode lottery. I mean, generally, like the
Mm.
inflation is just so ridiculous that, like, generally speaking, most people will like at least have some struggle to get a house and won't at least have a house as quickly as their parents did. You know what I mean? I mean, by the time my parents were my age, they'd bought this house and they were like kind of building it brick by brick really, but like they paid like a tenth of what it's now worth in 30, 40 years maybe. But you know, the price of the house now is like exponential and unaffordable for me. You know, it's just unbelievable. Like, and I feel like if you are lucky enough, if you are living in like a if you're living in a rich area, usually you're going to struggle to buy a house because the property prices are ridiculous. Like thinking about like London, we have like record levels of poverty in London, but you also have the the amount of shitty stuff that goes on with housing in London, and I
Mm.
think generally like a lot of the southeast is so insane to me that I don't think many people there are going to be able to afford to buy a house. The amount of people that move to a city for university and then just rent for like 20 years is insane. I think my brother's 29. Oh my god, that's so bad. Christopher, if you're watching this, I know your age, I promise, okay?
Well, I'm
I
30, so I
remember
feel
these
bad
things.
now.
But I was like, how old is he? Like maybe my memory's going at 25. And he's like just moved in with his partner and they own the flat, but it's still like a small flat, you know what I mean? But
Yeah.
that's like within Edinburgh, like impossible to buy a house. Like they're looking, but realistically, how far away they need to be out from the city centre when he works in the city centre is insane. Like it's a
Yeah.
commute to a station to then get that like ride in. And even then it's like 25, 30 minutes. It's so crazy how I mean in my area, a lot of my friends have houses and they can just drive to work and it's no issue whatsoever. And there's a lot more kind of affordable homes, but for most people that are living in more like urban areas, it's just impossible. Like you cannot afford to buy a house, and if you sink a shitload of money into rent over like your 20s, then it's even more difficult to buy a house when you're in your 30s and maybe you want to think about like settling down or having kids or whatever.
Yeah. Like
It's like a
there's
vicious cycle. It
it's
sucks.
it's it's crazy as well because all that rental money is literally just money that you've just pissed away. Like that's money you're never getting
Yeah, like
back
you're
because it's
never
not got
getting
you
that
anything.
back.
Yeah, yeah.
No,
You've paid
it's
off. Well, the worst part is you've paid off somebody else's mortgage, right? You've bought somebody else's
mm,
house with your money just because you weren't well off enough to be able to afford the upfront deposit on to be able to buy a house, right? It's criminal. Like I've done a lot of stuff on the housing crisis and housing issue on my channel because I think it's one of the biggest kind of wealth gaps between young people and boomers today. Is the
bloody
level to
boomers.
which access to the housing market has led to a huge wealth disparity. Obviously, interest rates have stayed low for an extremely long time, which has meant that access to credit for people to buy houses who already have existing houses, for example, I don't know, landlords, or property speculators, etc. They've all bought additional housing. There's been in the last 40 years, there's been zero council housing built, zero, literal, absolutely none.
It's
Whereas
so insane.
if you look at from like the post-war period up until the Thatcher administration, like there was some like level to which housing associations were paying for this, and was some from the private sector. The vast majority of new houses were all being built by local authorities as council accommodation, which was a way of being able to mitigate the private rental sector to be able to keep costs down and make sure people had affordable places to live until they could afford a deposit on a house. But that's not happened at
No,
all.
it's
And
horrendous.
as population's gone up, the demand for housing has also gone up. But there's been the housing's not increased to be able to deal with that demand. Because if you're the people who have the power to build the housing in the private sector, you're usually people who already have property already. Why would you want to devalue the property you have currently by increasing the supply? It makes no sense. The only way to ameliorate this issue is by building public housing, and we just have had successive governments, both Labour and Conservative, who just refused to do it. It was only in 2011 that the amount of people in the UK who were in private rentals exceeded the amount who are in council rentals. And it's only getting worse from here.
Yeah. It's crazy, like, that we are not building sustainable, affordable. Well, the thing is, there's so many different issues within the housing crisis. Like, the amount of money you pay now for a house is exponential compared to what it was for boomers. The problem is as well, like in London and other urban areas, is you'll have people like companies or these like big landlord types will come in and they'll buy up like buildings and rows of buildings, and they will be empty. As COVID kind of exemplified, was how easy it was to house homeless people when it needed to be done. It was completely doable. But because of what's happened with the austerity and like the cutting of services to like homeless services and access to these empty lots, you have people on the streets that are dying on the streets for no reason when this government could easily take care of them. I think that was probably one of the big things that hit home for me. And I'm like working with a homelessness charity at the minute for work, so I've kind of had a little bit look behind the curtain, because I've never had any real personally, I don't know anyone who's had interaction with homeless services, so I didn't really know that much about what they did and how they operated. But just coincidentally with my work, kind of understanding how they were affected by this government has kind of radicalized me a bit more on the housing side of things. And yeah, I mean, it's not just this government, it's been successive governments that have just systemically failed to address this issue. And you also have the issue of new homes being built, but they aren't adequate. My dad's, he works for the council, but he knows a lot about houses, and he knows a lot about dodgy houses and the amount of new homes that are built that are just not up to standard. And you'll buy a new house, you'll pay more than an old house, but you'll lose money on it because you soon realize within a few years you have a lot of teething problems that come through that haven't been, because corners have been cut to save money so that they can make more money when they sell it. And then the new buyers that are usually first-time buyers, often young and not as knowledgeable on how the housing market works or on how new houses, what the benefits of buying an older house versus a newer house. They see this new sexy house and they're like, well, I want to live there. It's brand new. It's never been lived in. But then they don't think about the things like the wood that's going to crack because it's not the kind of wood they used to put in old houses that is way more durable. And if someone slams a door, that entire door frame is going to fray and fall apart. And it's like these little things that you would never think about. And my dad was just like walking around this house with me. It was like a new build, and someone had been living in it, and they'd already they were taking a loss as it was. And he was like look at all like the skirting boards and everything all cracked, like all of them. All the door frames were cracked. And he was like, yeah,
Jesus.
you can see the kind of materials they've used and just how quickly it'll fall apart and you'll have to do all those repairs. And it was kind of like, I don't even think the owner realized that they needed to kind of fix those problems before they sold it on, or that they were like asking for too much with all the like little issues that were actually present. And it's just insane to me. Like, it's really been eye opening because I've been kind of house hunting this year. And yeah, like, it's definitely like opened my eyes up as to the amount of money you can spend on something that looks nice and shiny and brand new and can be sold to an ignorant buyer like me. If I was to go there by myself, I wouldn't know about any of this stuff. So thank God my dad was there.
Well, that's the problem. Is that the people trying to get on the housing ladder at the start, all the first time buyers, they've only just managed to scrape together the money for a deposit. So how they expect
Yeah.
to shell out additional money to be able to get a surveyor on the house to start with, right? Like the
Yeah.
amount of money you have to sink into it is crazy. And the other big issue as well is that what counts in government guidelines as quote unquote affordable housing isn't really affordable housing, and it still just goes into the private sector anyway. It just doesn't solve
Mm.
any of the bloody problems.
Yeah. I feel like what's affordable to one quarter of people is certainly not affordable to another.
Exactly, and
And
it's
if your
different in
living
different parts of the
costs,
country as well. Yeah,
oh, absolutely, yeah. Like I remember when I was looking at when I wanted to go to Essex University, and the accommodation there was just so crazy expensive compared to the accommodation up north, and I was like, how the hell do people like afford to live here? Like the cost of living is just unbelievable. Like the difference, and I just think it's like unbelievable. It's just crazy to me how you're gonna justify it. Somebody said in my chat the Grenfell Tower fire was caused by this type of negligence. Yeah, exactly, like that cost
true,
cut and shit.
true, very true.
And what's
And
happened with that sod all? Like
exactly,
literally getting nowhere.
exactly. It's put profit before
Um,
people. It's the I hate it.
yeah, I'm gonna head off because I've got to sleep early because I am dead. Would you like to
Okay,
give yourself a little bit of a shout out and
absolutely,
your
by all
kind of
means.
summary? Go
Yeah,
ahead.
so I stream like every so often when I have the nous to go out and stream. It's usually 7 or 8 p.m. UK time, GMT. At No Justice MTG, basically everywhere: Twitch, YouTube, um, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, all that malarkey. And I'm a leftist, socialist. I talk about UK political current events most of the time. Like I would call myself a kind of pragmatic one rather than a kind of more idealistic one in that regard. And then sometimes I play video games as well. So I'm playing like Magic Arena at the moment, but it's mostly pathologic. If any of that sounds interesting, drop me a
Nice.
follow. I post a lot of memes on Twitter if
And the
any of that
memes are spicy and brilliant, okay? So follow for the memes,
yeah,
if
even if you just
nothing
believe
else.
that.
Even if you're
Exactly.
a shit lib like me, follow for the memes. Duh. Um,
Absolutely brilliant. I appreciate having a chat today. It was a lot of fun.
yeah, yeah, it was really nice.
Good.
This is the
We need
leftism we like to see, the pragmatic leftism. This is the
exactly.
leftism I get on board with.
Absolutely. We need to see more like Twitch Britbonger solidarity because
Absolutely.
we cannot have the only leftist Britbongers on Twitch politics being Lonabox and Chud Logic. There needs to be more than just the two of us.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I mean, we need to do something about that because we have no one so far. Like,
It's true. Also,
too many Americans.
the other issue we have there is literally there's no right leaning people on political Twitch from the UK. Literally nobody. Because I was thinking, well, could we do some
Yeah, I
kind of
can't think of anyone.
like British like political debate panel? But we just can't do it because it's
Yeah,
it's
I
just like
know.
us two,
It
Chud, Lona
sucks.
Box, and Kevin Logan. Is literally it.
Yeah, like there is literally no one. Yeah, I don't know anybody right-leaning on here, actually, that's from the UK.
Yeah, exactly.
I
That's
can't
what I'm
imagine
thinking.
Tories being on Twitch. Like, I just can't.
What,
I just
what
can't.
is this? What is this? What is this
What is
newfangled
this?
Twitch platform?
I will not be using this. Butler, please take away the computer. I refuse. Oh God. Yeah, I mean, as long all we need to do is have the leftist and just solidarity on the left and on in the center, so we can take down anybody saying the word Pritt bonger. I never want to hear that term ever again from an American. I'm sick of it.
I'm
And
reclaiming it.
anybody who has said that, they are not allowed to visit the UK. If I get into power, that's the rule. You cannot come to the UK if you've used the term Britbonger. I refuse to be marginalised like this.
Like slurs in my political Twitch.
No, never, never. I would not allow this. Right, I'm a head off. Have a good night anyway. Take care of yourself.
Much appreciated. Again, and
Wishing you all the best.
you want to shout out your socials as well for
Oh yeah.
for the two people that are watching on my end.
Listen, as a fellow two viewer Andy, I relate. I am Queen_Janey on Twitch. You can find me on, I've got so many different names, it's really annoying. But you can find me on my Twitter too, which is Queen Janey with 3 Y's at the end, because that's not obnoxious. And I also have an Instagram, which you'll find linked on my Twitch account. So yeah, I'm just a shit lib, but I like to talk to people from everywhere. So I'm an open-minded shit lib, you know? It's nice to try.
Like anti-Tory as a policy platform.
Yeah, that is my policy platform.
I'm down
And I
for
also
it.
enjoy a meme, you know, I do enjoy a meme on Twitter too, so obviously follow for that if nothing else.
Absolutely, 100%, 100%. Yeah, brilliant. Well, in which case I will bid you adieu, and we'll hopefully see each other on a
Take care of
panel at some
yourself.
point. We'll have
Yes.
to get a UK versus US panel if we can't do a whole just UK panel.
Yes, that's what I would love
Yeah.
to do.
No
That
worries. You
sounds
take care of yourself.
fun. Okay, bye.
Bye.